Today's episode. The power of gaming to influence the way that we experience the world around us. And kind of the one sentence to sum it up is how being an assassin taught me history. Welcome to Life is the Game, hosted by yours truly, Alexandra Nicole Stone. Get ready to uncover the secrets to mastering your destiny, becoming the main character in your life, and embracing a life filled with meaning and joy. Ready? Let's play. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Life is the Game. I'm your host, Alexandra Nicole Stone, and I'm really hoping that you guys have been enjoying your summer and are taking yourself out of the house, having some fun in the sun because it's been just a splendid summer. So, if you haven't yet, go outside, take in the sun, have some fresh air, go for a swim, go for a run, go for a hike, go for whatever you need to do because summer is coming to a close and just really make sure to enjoy the most of it. So I just wanted to start by saying happy summer. For those of you that have been tuning in for the last 6 months, I really just wanted to say thank you for all of your support. It means the world to me, and all of this wouldn't be possible without you. I hope you've been enjoying my own journey, and I hope you've been enjoying the guests that we've been having on the podcast, and that you've been getting some value from the advice that both I and my guests have been giving. And I know right now is sort of a difficult time because a lot of people are either getting laid off or they're on the job hunt and not getting the offers that they really want. So it's a little bit of awkward time. And this is happening across the board. Kind of like 1 in 5 people I'm talking to are going through this experience. I myself have gone through this experience or am going through this experience. And I just wanted to say that I know it's really hard to go through these things. And, a lot of us have bills and responsibilities that we need to pay on top of. But if you can, and if it's possible, really just take this time and look at it as a gift because once you get a job, right? I hope you were able to get some severance pay or, a little collect unemployment in this time. But if you have the time to pause, really like savor it because once you're going to have that job for the next 3 months, 4 months, you're just going to be going at it and really invested in that job. So, kind of find the gift in where you are right now and enjoy this time to discover yourself and go out there and apply and make it a point to apply, but also take some of the time and breathe and enjoy and don't punish yourself for not having something lined up. Just keep your head up, stay optimistic, and keep pushing forward. Right now, there's a little bit of a bubble happening because of all of this AI stuff. But at the end of the day, AI is going to need a driver. It's going to need a creative director, someone with a vision in order to get the best possible result. And those people are going to be you. So don't get discouraged, fine tune your skills, explore yourself, and I promise there will be good things on the way. Just don't lose faith and don't lose hope. I know some of y'all are going through a hard time, so just make sure to keep your head up and find the gift in it. Enjoy that. Think of it as a side quest. Even though it might not be the most optimal situation, just be like, okay, well, how can I make the best of the situation that I'm going through right now? Because I can't change the situation. All you have control of is like, I'm applying for jobs. Try to have some fun with it. Try to weave in some fun and take advantage of the time that you have now for yourself. Now, diving into today's episode. It's a little bit different from some of the ones that I've been doing in the past, which have been really about taking gamification concepts and applying them to our lives, and it's really touching on the power of gaming to influence the way that we experience the world around us. And kind of the one sentence to sum it up is how being an assassin taught me history. But for those of you that have been following along for a while, you know that I've been dabbling in the Assassin's Creed series, playing Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and I just came back from my trip to Greece. So for those of you that don't know, Assassin's Creed is basically a game series that's very historically focused, where this generation or this lineage of assassins kind of take part in major historical eras, basically protecting the order of the world from these bad guys, which are the Templars or the cultists who are trying to take this power and change the order of society. So, the beautiful thing about these games is that they are taking place in these really rich historical settings. I'm talking ancient Greece, I'm talking ancient Egypt, I'm talking Italy during the Renaissance. So these really rich historical eras, and they're really transporting you into those worlds. And the whole point is that you are playing this assassin, and that's how you're navigating through those worlds. Okay, so how does being an assassin have to do with learning history? So just for fun, before I went to Greece this summer, I was like, okay, let me like get into the mood for Greece and start playing Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which takes place in kind of like 500 BC Greece. I was really excited to sort of play the game, and I have played some of the previous ones before, the first and second one, which take place in Florence, Italy, and Assassin's Creed Origins, which takes place in Egypt. So I'm very familiar with the gameplay style and the richness of the worlds. And I had never played Odyssey before. So I was really excited to kind of just get into the game. And the cool thing about these games is that they're really emulating historical scenarios, and they're really emulating the physical world. So I really think the game creators did their best to honor what that place and what the civilization looked like in that period of time. And so I think maybe I've played, I don't know, 30 to 50 hours with my boyfriend before I ended up going to Greece. And, was just having fun going through the narrative, all that stuff. And then I went to Greece and Athens specifically, and we were visiting the Parthenon and we were visiting the Acropolis. Obviously, Athens, it's a major location in the game because of the richness of history and all of the architecture involved in that space. So at this point, I'm not really drawing any major connections between the game and the space. I get to Athens and I'm visiting these ruins. I'm visiting the Acropolis. I'm visiting the Temple of Hephaestus. I'm visiting the Parthenon, right? All these ancient ruins. And while I'm there and looking at sort of these ancient structures that are kind of dilapidated from time and really partial, I'm seeing this clear vision of what the world used to look like because of the game. Because you spend a lot of time in the game in Athens, and you're able to navigate through these ancient ruins, and your character takes on a life in this civilization. So it was really this interesting feeling where I was there in the ruins, but somehow I had this clear visualization of what it looked like in the past. And I think part of the reason that visualization is so strong is because the Assassin's Creed game series is really focused on architecture, because it's all of these buildings, it's all of these structures, and the way that you move through the world as an assassin, you're ducking behind bushes, you're climbing up historical buildings, right? You're like climbing the Parthenon, you're climbing up the Acropolis, you're on top of these buildings, you're on the edge. So the nature of the game makes it so you're really taking in the architectural surroundings. It's a very tactile game in that sense. And I was like, oh my gosh, like that's the reason I'm able to have such a strong visual of what these surroundings look like. Because maybe if I was playing another game where you're just sort of walking through the village, you wouldn't have processed it the same way. But it was being an assassin and the experience of being an assassin and navigating that world, right? So you're climbing on things, you're jumping from one building to another, you're running away from, soldiers and jumping on buildings to escape, you're tactilely sitting on an edge to assassinate someone. So a major part of the game is the architecture, is the world. You're experiencing it in such a way because it's a critical component of how you play the game. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, like I'm able to be transported into the past, thousands of years into the past, and have such a clear visualization because of this game, because the game is really modeled off of the historical design of that location. So it's really trying to honor the history of that location. I haven't done any research on how much research the Assassin's Creed team did to build that world, but I'm talking about an open world video game. So it's really like imagine the whole map of Greece and all the villages and all the settlements and all the towns and all the major cities are built up. And I'm sure I didn't get to, I haven't checked all of them, but definitely in Athens, I was noticing like there's a lot of parallels. And certainly they took some creative license in the design to make the game richer and more opulent and more immersive. But really, I don't think there's any other experience or any other thing that you can do to experience and really like have such a strong visualization of what that world looked like before. I don't think anything else could quite transport you into history like that. If I did 30 to 50 hours of research, I wouldn't have that visualization. Sure, I would have some knowledge. And if I was watching like a bunch of ancient Greek movies, right? I don't know if I would get the same visualization that I had in that game because in that game, I was really in the Parthenon, right? And being in this place, I was like, okay, I wonder how many other things about this game are historically accurate. So in the game, there's a huge statue of Athena in the Acropolis. And my boyfriend and I were debating whether or not that existed because I went to Athens when I was little, maybe like five, maybe 6 or 7 years old. And I was like telling him, I don't remember that statue being there. And he's like, "I think they just put it there decoratively." And I'm like, "That feels like a little bit gaudy to put there decoratively if it didn't exist, right?" Because I felt playing the game that they would try to honor what it looked like at the time. So I'm like, why would they just put such a noticeable thing there if it didn't exist? And so I'm in this museum in the Agora, and I'm looking, I'm reading all the placards and stuff. I'm trying to see the historical accuracy of the game. And I find this 3D model of what the Acropolis looked like fully built out. And lo and behold, there's a statue of Athena in the main square of the Acropolis. So I was like, oh my God, they really are doing the research to get this as historically accurate as possible. And so then I dived even deeper. You're talking to Pericles, right? At the time, he's the leader of Athens. In the game, he plays a critical role, and the Parthenon and the Acropolis are kind of like a major setting in the game. And a lot of the drama of the game revolves around this physical location and this character. And there was a war between Sparta and Athens, and Pericles was building or like funding the Acropolis. There was a lot of tension amongst Athenians because he was the one funding the Acropolis with their money and during a time of war. And so I was like, did this really happen? So I'm reading these placards. Pericles was sponsoring the Parthenon, like it was his brainchild. There wasn't a war going on with Sparta at the time. And it was really cool because I'm like telling my mom and my cousin who I'm with, like, hey, this is like what was happening at the time. And I was able to validate it with the placards. And I'm sure the game definitely takes some creative license. Obviously, the character that you're playing, the protagonist in the game, didn't exist. And the side quests and the missions that you go on are not all historically accurate. But I was passively learning history through this game. And I was in this ancient space, which you would just see as ruins, right? Oh my gosh, these ruins are thousands of years old, but you wouldn't see the complete picture. You wouldn't know that, oh my gosh, there used to be gardens alongside all these temples and there's fountains there. And this was the hub of society. This is where all the philosophers would go. You had like Socrates going there and chit-chatting, and the upper crust of society would make their way up to the Acropolis and socialize. So as I was moving through this like ancient columns to enter the Acropolis, I'm actually having this whole like vision of what it used to be. I was like, okay, there was like a humongous statue, gold statue of Athena in the center. There was buildings on the side, on both. There was like six temples or six structures on both sides. There was an internal garden. So I'm having this completely different vision of how that space actually was at the time. that I would have never had if I never played the game. And I had such a reference to what was happening historically because of the game. So, mind you, while I'm playing the game, I'm not noticing that I'm learning history, right? My whole experience is like I'm the protagonist. I have my issues and my missions, and this is what I'm pursuing. And so I'm interacting with all these characters. And I only realized that how much history that I was passively learning once I got to Athens and was getting triggered by these historical locations. So this really got me excited. And I don't know if I would have this lens on necessarily if I wasn't doing this podcast and doing Life is the Game. But I was like, oh my gosh, there's so many parallels between this video game and the real world. So I was like, this is so cool. I would recommend to anyone before they go to Athens or Greece to play this video game that you would have such a understanding of the architecture. I think it's really the Assassin's Creed game that allowed me to have the relationship with the architecture and digest the architecture in the way that I did. So unless I was an architect and I had the lens of an architect on playing some educational video game, I don't really think I would have processed and digested that information the same way as I'm an assassin and I'm having a tactile experience. Like I'm climbing up the Acropolis. I'm pitched on the statue of Athena observing my surroundings, right? So it's really the nature of the game. It was really being an assassin that taught me that lesson. That maybe there's so much more to video games than some people are giving them credit to. It made me realize that there's this like, what if there was some kind of collaboration between Ubisoft, the creators of Assassin's Creed, and some of these historical locations to license 3D rendering, let people have like experiences in the Assassin's Creed world before visiting these historical sites, right? Because that allows them to kind of process it. Maybe you're not an assassin in this game, but maybe there's like parkour still involved and you figure out how to design the exploration of the world and the tactile experiences of jumping on buildings. Maybe you're an explorer and the quests that you need to achieve are at the top of those buildings. So you're climbing those buildings. So I was like, oh my gosh, there's so much educational potential in these games. And I know a lot of parents have concerns of like, oh my gosh, my child is playing all these video games. It's frying their brain. And I'm also like, whoa, there's so much value in passive learning because I would have never done the 30 to 50 hours of research to get the amount of insight that I did from playing the Assassin's Creed game. I just wouldn't have done it. It wouldn't have been fun for me. So I was like, what if the future of gaming, I can't even imagine how it's going to blow up once we have like really good augmented reality and virtual reality, and people can be at the Parthenon and just put on these goggles and sort of see what it's supposed to look like. Or there can be like a holographic projection, maybe based off of these video games that kind of overlay the actual Parthenon. Because you had like a humongous team of game designers who are doing research, who are building these worlds, right? To such a historically accurate point. So there can be some collaboration. Maybe there's some room for historians and game designers to collaborate. I'm not sure there. The coolest part is that I really think the future of gaming will be developing passive learning inside of gaming. So regardless if you're an assassin or playing a first person shooter game or a role playing game, how can we design passive learning into these games? Kind of like how Assassin's Creed Odyssey did for me. Maybe we even dial it up a little bit, but the end user or the player or the children who are maybe playing 10 plus hours a week of video games are not just playing video games and getting the dopamine hit, but they're like, oh my gosh, I just spent 4 hours playing video games. I had a blast and I learned XYZ. There's so much merit in video games providing passive learning to individuals. I don't know, maybe teachers and game designers can collaborate. And the vision I have is not just, simple educational games, but I'm like, what these big gaming companies, you have Ubisoft, you have Activision, you have Riot Games. What if it's these big gaming companies that are collaborating with educators or subject matter experts and creating really immersive gaming experience and really rich, developed worlds that are also teaching people and that people can just walk away with like, oh my gosh, I just had this amazing gaming experience. I had a blast. I leveled up my character. I built my avatar. I beat this humongous boss, but I also happen to learn X, Y, and Z in the process. So I'm just like, whoa, maybe this is the future of gaming, and this is what's awaiting us all, and exploring things, exploring similar experiences like the one that I had with Assassin's Creed Odyssey in Greece and in other realms. It just opened up my mind to the possibility of like, wow, gaming really can teach you things even without you knowing it. And I'm sure there's been studies on like problem solving and strategy because gaming does teach you that, but maybe gaming can teach you real world applicable things and allow people to have fun in the process and sort of take the arduous part of learning out of it and make it fun and make it immersive and make it memorable. I was sort of also reflecting on like what makes this story and like what helped me learn throughout the game. And there's two things. There's this gorgeous, well-developed, well-designed open world of ancient Greece at the time, but that doesn't have any meaning to you, right? Like I'm not paying attention to that environment unless I have stuff to do there. So I have that main character. You have the main character, the protagonist in the game. Cool. So there's a protagonist and then there's your environment. And what builds the relationship between those two and the player, you. And then I realized that that was the story. The whole reason I was learning is because I was so invested in the development of my main character, of the protagonist of the Assassin's Creed Odyssey game, that I was paying attention to all the sort of side missions or all the narratives happening around that because, you get attached to them because they don't know where their mother is, they're an orphan, they want to escape this island, they want to build a life for themselves, they're a mercenary, right? So there's all these things that you're really invested in the character. And so you go on all these quests, you set out on this journey and meet all other players along the way because you want to push the narrative forward and you want to find out what happens to her or them. You can play a guy or a girl, so that's why I say her. So it's the narrative of the game. It's not just the world, but it's the immersive narrative of the game and the desire to push that narrative forward that allows you to learn, right? Because I wasn't learning or I wasn't processing that I was learning about the Parthenon and I was learning that Pericles built the Parthenon. But in the game, there's a big drama because Pericles is building the Parthenon. It's causing some civil unrest, there's like a political issue happening between him and another character, and you meet Socrates in the process. So you're really invested in the plot. I'm really remembering the Parthenon, not just because it's a historical location, but because like, one of the primary climaxes and conflicts of the game transpire in the Parthenon. And so I'm like, that's why it's so visceral and memorable to me, that specific location. Maybe I couldn't name all the other locations to you, but I remembered specifically that one because the climax of the game happened there. That location was really critical to your main quest. So a lot of the major moments happening in that plot was happening in Athens, in the Parthenon. So that's what made it so memorable to me personally. And I haven't even finished the game, so I can't even tell you beyond that the historical references. I was sort of comparing this to our reality, right? Like we're the main characters in our life. We have this life that we're in, right? We have the world that we're in. And what makes us attached to the world around us, it's our need to survive. it's our identity, our wants, our desires, and those are the things that push us forward in this narrative and make us take action and allow us to meet other players and other characters who then in turn influence us with their knowledge and maybe set us out on different side quests in our life and influence the way that we're playing the game. It's that narrative, it's our personal narrative that drives us forward in this life. And it's what allows us to pursue our passions and level up. So that personal narrative and being intentional about how we design our own personal narrative influences how we play the game and what we learn along the way and the outcome of our lives. Life really is a game, and games are really reflecting a lot of deep life concepts. Really, this episode is really just about leaving you with some questions. What are the educational implications of gaming? How can major gaming studios design and intentionally integrate education into their gaming? How can the rest of the world embrace gaming as a cornerstone of education? All these questions are just bubbling to the surface. So, my dearest players, what if life was a game? How would you play? How would you navigate the world around you? What is your story? And remember, you have to always have fun. Ready? Let's play.